We shift now to Ukraine, where intense fighting continues to mount as world leaders begin to gain clarity over Russia's involvement in the crisis. ABC's Carolyn Costello reports on the unrest in the region.
After a third day of heavy fighting in southeast Ukraine near the town of Novorossiysk, the region now appears to be in the control of pro-Russian separatists.
It's evident that Russia is fighting here with us on our land.
As hostilities in eastern Ukraine become more and more intense, Ukraine's president has said a Russian invasion of his country is underway. After an emergency meeting held by NATO, officials say it's clear Russia continues to supply separatists with tanks, armored vehicles, artillery, and rocket launchers.
It's now clear that Russian troops and equipment have illegally crossed the border into eastern and southeastern Ukraine.
At every step, Russia has come before this council to say everything except the truth. It has manipulated, it has obfuscated, it has outright lied.
And while United States officials have expressed concern over Russia's overt support for Ukrainian rebels, don't expect military action anytime soon.
We are not taking military action to solve the Ukrainian problem.
While Russian President Vladimir Putin did not address allegations of Russia's involvement, he commended the pro-Russian separatists for, quote, undermining Kiev's military operation. European Union foreign ministers are set to propose new sanctions against Russia tomorrow at a summit in Brussels. Carolyn Costello, ABC News, New York.
Matthew, this is your region of expertise. First of all, is this Russia or is this Russian separatists backed by Russia? Do we know?
It's both. It's Russian separatists who are backed by Russia and actual Russian forces in the region.
When Russians first invaded Crimea, you were on the show and you said this is really an effort by Putin to silence his own internal critics, rally some support within the country, get some of that weight off his back. If that's what he was doing in Crimea, what's he doing now in eastern Ukraine?
So Putin's goal in Ukraine is to keep a veto over any Ukrainian government in Kiev. And the way he's keeping that veto is to control land. And right now he's controlling the land that the separatists have in this thing called the Donbas People's Republic.
So it's making sure that he can go in and rain havoc on Ukraine.
Right. I mean, the thing to keep in mind here is that Ukraine is the cradle of Russian civilization. And this is sort of a quasi-religious move for Putin. So he doesn't want to allow Ukraine to become part of Europe. And he needs to be able to maintain some kind of leverage over the government in Kiev. This is how he's doing it. Not a lot of reaction from around the world. I mean, not a lot of forceful reaction when he went into Crimea, now when he's going into this region in eastern Ukraine. If what you're saying is right and he says, well, I need to step into Kiev at this point, is that a game changer? What's the tipping point at which the world's response begins to change? I'm not sure. No, I don't think he'll move into Kiev. He doesn't want to do that. It's too expensive for him in a whole host of ways. What he'll do is maintain options at every single point. So right now he's moved into the southeast. He's maintained an option to go further west to create this land bridge into Crimea, which would make it easier for him in Crimea. But he's not going to do it right away. He's going to sit back and he's going to watch. He's going to see what the Ukrainian government does. He's going to see how NATO reacts, and he'll make his play after their next move. I'm glad you brought up NATO, and I'm curious from you and Mike. There is a connection now. They're what, like an adjunct member of NATO, Ukraine is? Or is NATO obligated to step in at this point, or? No. So what happened today is that the Ukrainian government made a formal request for NATO to consider membership. Now, what membership means is an open question, and NATO agreed to consider the question. So, Mike, what are the responses that the West has here?
It's been sanctions. There's not a lot we're going to do militarily, I think. You know, a shooting war would just escalate very quickly there, and it would just do nobody any good, while we're trying to, again, focus also on the Middle East as well. But, you know, it's awful, it's terrible, but the kind of forces that he's brought to the battlefield right now, divisions, motorized rifle regiments, these are not humanitarian type vehicles. These are vehicles that close with, destroy the enemy, and are killing machines. And frankly, they're going to give the Ukraine military and that government a run for their money because of their capability. But there is a shooting war that's going on. I mean, it's not like Eastern Ukraine has been peaceful. It's just not involving Western power, correct? Right. So there have been, the UN is estimating about
3,000 dead now. Is that the latest number that have been killed in combat? My estimates suggest that there are anywhere from about 8,000 to 20,000 separatists, especially now with the Russian reinforcements on the ground. The problem for the Ukrainian military is they can only put about 12,000 in the field on any given day. So it's essentially a 1-to-1 ratio, with the Russian separatist side having the advantage in the number of veterans they have on the field, their experience, and in weaponry.
Mike mentioned sanctions, and there are indications that they're beginning to work against Russia. I mean, the Russian economy is not in particularly good shape. Is that enough to deter Putin?
No, absolutely not. Not right now. Again, Putin's constituency are future Russians of this sort of Eurasian future greater Russia that he's imagining. So he can put his own population under a lot of financial stress, under a lot of military stress, and they'll go along with him. The latest opinion polls continue to show that he has extreme support for what he's doing there. That could shift as the number of dead Russian soldiers changes, and that starts to get out in the press, which is happening as we speak. But we're nowhere near from turning public opinion against Putin in his own country.
We were talking about this a little bit on Twitter earlier in the day, and Mike, I know you had a question for Matthew.
Yeah, I just want, what's next? Let's say...
For Putin,
Yeah,
right?
for Putin. I mean, we first talked about this land bridge, and what that means is easy access to Crimea, which he took before. Does he go all the way to Kiev? I mean, let's say he eventually does get Ukraine. Right. Does he go for the Baltics? When does he, to Andrew's point, when does he tip the point where NATO does get involved?
Well, I don't think he goes for Kiev. That would be an extraordinary situation. I do see him moving towards Crimea. Not yet, but maybe in a week, maybe in 2 weeks, maybe in a couple of months. The next move I would imagine, if he goes that far to Crimea, is to move into Odessa, which has a Russian population, and further into Transnistria, which is a region of Moldova on the far west side of Ukraine, where he can claim again that this Russian population is inviting him in. And the only other place that would be a NATO country where I think he risks moving is Estonia, into a city called Narva, where there's a Russian population. Again, I find that highly unlikely. I don't think he's actually interested in these things. He just needs enough land in Ukraine to have veto power over the government in Kiev. He's got that now. All he has to do is maintain it.
Let's say he does go all the way to Kiev, or he does go into Latvia. I think you
Estonia.
Estonia, sorry. It's a little confusing. I mean, this is how, I can't believe it's 100 years since World War I started.
Yeah,
this is kind of how World War I started, with all of these alliances. Is there any indication that NATO would actually respond?
I think if he continues to push this southwestern front, that you could see NATO begin to provide surveillance coverage, begin to possibly put aircraft in the area, but I don't expect that they would put ground troops in anytime soon. I could see them moving into some kind of ISR, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance situation. It's crazy. I agree, right? This is Europe. This is 2014, not 1914.
All right, so we're going to take a break here and shift from our foreign policy to our politics, and as we bring it back domestically. And after a break here on RFL, back here in New York, is broken windows broken? Lots of questions about the controversial NYPD tactic that also has lots of support. After the break, we'll hear from a local professor who says city cops should find other ways of dealing with low-level crimes.